Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to New York Metro Weather's long-range forecast discussion. We're publishing this on December 10th, 2011. We have a lot to talk about in the current pattern, and we want to take a look really into the future because we had a lot of people asking on our social networking outlets, Facebook and Twitter, about really when the pattern is going to change and how it's going to change and if we're going to get into a more wintry pattern over the next several weeks. So we'll start by taking a look at the current pattern. You can see what we have going on here. There is a ridge on the west coast. It's not monstrous, but there are 570 heights up to about central Washington, and you can see there's a trough coming in trying to beat down this ridge, but really the mean trough is still over the central and eastern United States. So we're getting some cold air into our forecast region today as this trough comes through. This is from last night's European model, courtesy of Storm Vista, and you can see this trough swinging through. So we're getting some intrusion of surface cold. But important to look at what's happening here, and this has been the trend over the past few weeks. As this cold comes through, watch how, with the lack of any blocking upstream and the lack of any persistent ridge out west, this cold just becomes in and out. It goes in and out and goes into eastern Canada, and look at the heights at 500 millibar rising dramatically over our region again. So we'll loop that one more time. We hear this shot of cold and the heights rise again by Monday. Now, also important to note, there's a trough now on the west coast cutting off over California. The ridge is still here trying to build, but really this pattern is in shambles as far as supporting snow over our area. So we'll loop this through one more time and you can see what happens here. Look at the heights rising as a southeast ridge response. As the ridge kind of breaks down on the west coast, and you get this trough coming through. Now the ridge rebuilds. So here we go. We have another positive PNA on the west coast. But look how there's not even a semblance of blocking here. There's no ridging. As you try to get a look up here towards Greenland, you can't really see on this map, but we'll see it in a second. And look at the southeast ridge responding. The ridge breaks down towards the end of the European run, and we have a storm cutting up through the middle of the United States, bringing us rain. We'll look at the northern hemispheric maps, and this will really give us a better idea of what's happening here. So here we are once again with the current map, the west coast ridge, the east coast trough, transient though, as it moves through very quickly. We're going to go through this a few times here and look at some important features. So for this, keep your eye here on the west coast and watch the ridge. It's trying to rebuild, but you keep getting these troughs that swing down and beat down the ridge. So essentially, really, it's having trouble remaining persistent. And then towards the end of the run, it actually retrogrades. So it was here on the west coast, now it's retrograding back towards the Gulf of Alaska, which is not good for cold air or really any type of winter precipitation. Now, take a look here to the north. This is Greenland. This is the Davis Strait. Watch here very carefully. We have right now a polar vortex sitting over there, and the NAO is positive. Now, watch this as we'll loop through this run really at a decent speed here. And watch how, although it breaks down momentarily, it continues to rebuild. And here's the frame we want to stop at right here. This is 168 hours, so next Saturday. We have actually a ridge trying desperately to build towards Greenland, towards the Davis Straits. Here's where the NAO might actually, on the readings, on the hard data, it might actually go towards more neutral instead of being positive. But what happens here? It is shunted to the east as the polar vortex builds back once again right into Greenland and right into the Davis Straits. That is a very, very unsupportive pattern for snow. And with the ridge breaking down the west coast, the southeast ridge responds, and once again we'll probably have positive temperature anomalies. And here's the European, this is next weekend. Here are the temperature anomalies that it's showing over the east coast, and you can see these are over our area, 10 degrees, 14 degrees above average, and up here in southeast Canada, 12 to 14, even 14 to 16 degrees above average here. And the cold air centered here in the north central United States, which is where it has been recently as well. We'll loop through the GFS ensembles, and this is on the left you're seeing the 500 millibar height anomaly, so the departure from normal 500 millibar. And on the right you're seeing the spaghetti plots. The white line is the operational GFS, and the other lines are the height field for the ensembles. The pink is a 498. The blue is 528, the green is 552, and the red is 576 heights at 500 millibars. So we'll go through this here, and you can see initially, obviously, the ensembles are all in agreement because this is 0, 12 hours. But really, watch here on the left. Here's our transient cold shot. And look how things rebuild so quickly. Above average 500 millibar heights. Over Greenland, we have a briefly building. This is a 168-hour period. The ridge tries to get up there, but it has no luck. As in agreement with the Euro, the GFS builds the polar vortex back over Greenland, over the Davis Straits. And notice now the GFS also has some troughiness over Alaska and the northwestern United States. So we can use oscillations here. We're going to use the MJO, the Madden-Julian oscillation, to take a look at the forecast, and here are the phases. If you're not familiar, it's very, very quick Google. We could explain it, but it would take a long time. But you could read through it very quickly. I believe there's actually a good Wikipedia page, which gives you all the details in that. So here is the GFS. This is the European ensemble forecast for the MJO from the 9th of December to the 9th of January. So we're looking a month in advance, and we have traversed through phases 3, 4, and 5 with a moderate impulse as recently as December 5th, and now we're to December 8th, which is when this began. And notice how the European ensembles take this thing right down into the circle here, which is indicative of a much weaker MJO. So it's weak, and it goes into the circle, and it kind of floats around here back into unfavorable stages, and then starts swinging back around into it again. So essentially, the European ensembles have this MJO impulse weakening at phase 5 and then coming right back around through the unfavorable stages. And we talk about unfavorable stages. Here is the 500 millibar height composite for phase 5, which is where, as you can see, the European brings us in now. This matches up pretty well with the GFS ensembles that we just looked at. So here's GFS ensembles. Notice the highest heights here over Greenland, the polar vortex up here, and higher heights here down the east coast. It matches up really well. We have a very strong negative height anomaly here over Greenland. A ridge on the west coast, which is not too strong. It's present, but it's not too strong because troughiness over Alaska, and you get the result, which is a big ridge over the east coast. Not a big monster, blowtorch ridge, but a ridge big enough to keep things normal or slightly above normal without any real chances for snow. Here is the GFS forecast, which only goes to December 24th. A little less enthusiastic in bringing it and floating it around here until January, but it brings it back out into an unfavorable state and really puts us right back where we are right now in about 2.5 weeks. So here is the, just for comparison, the phase 8 composites, and you can see their ridge on the west coast is it's able to build more here. We have a little bit of a blocking signature, not really as much as you would like to see here towards Greenland as far as high latitude blocking, but notice the lower 500 millibar height anomalies on the east coast. Now really, to kind of wrap things up here, we aren't expecting a pattern change through Christmas. The atmosphere at the current moment really is kind of settled into this pattern of rebuilding the polar vortex over the poles and over Greenland and over the Davis Straits, and periodically building the ridge on the west coast. And the stratosphere right now is not supportive of any major changes either. There have been some QBO changes, which we discussed on our website. And it's important to remember that the QBO changes can often take a month, even 2 months, to be realized in the pattern. And although the European and Canadian models were showing some stratospheric warming yesterday, they have backed off a little bit today. So it's important to keep things in perspective. Just because a model, does show a stratospheric warming event, you have to roll that forward and realize that it's going to take a few weeks really to get the pattern to change. The Arctic oscillation is very positive. We actually had near record values a few weeks ago, I believe it was. We've come down a little bit to reality with that, but the rubber band theory of that takes us really into January, when we could even look to begin to see some high latitude blocking up towards Greenland, up towards Davis Strait and eastern northern Canada, and more support. We have to look out for snow. We have to look out towards the Pacific as well. You have to think, will the Pacific be as favorable? And you could look at the GFS, watch as it retrogrades the ridge from the west coast. Now it's back into the central Pacific Ocean. and we have a trough on the west coast again. So these are all important things to consider. We have a long ways to go right now. If you're if you're on the East Coast and you're looking for a pattern, especially in the Mid-Atlantic, and you're looking for a pattern that is really supportive of snow and cold, we do have a long way to go. We have a lot to to flush out this unfavorable pattern, and it'll probably take stratospheric warming event. And right now we don't have any of that. We have no indications of that for the next week or two. It'll probably take a flip of the NAO and the AO and the EPO, and we need to get this vortex out of Greenland and the Davis Straits. Positive signs: northern Canada is cold. I mean, this polar vortex is going to be sitting over there for 3 or 4 weeks by the time this is all said and done. And if the pattern finally does begin to flip, which I do think it will, by the way, I do think we will start to see some higher latitude ridging by at least the middle of January. We will have a lot of cold air built up there and snow cover, so that when these shots of cold come down, they could be pretty severe. But as far as getting the pattern ready for more frequent snow events, we're going to have to continue watching very carefully, because these things can jump out at you out of nowhere. They can really kind of surprise you, but from what we're looking at right now with these MJO composites, we're going to go through another unfavorable few weeks here, which will probably bring us into the first week or two of January before we can start looking at getting this pattern changed and getting set up for a more wintry and snowy pattern as the stratosphere begins to respond. But as it is right now, it's really in a slumber, and that's not helping us out as the polar vortex has become comfortable over Greenland and the Davis Straits. But we'll be sure to keep you guys updated. We'll be here. We'll be on the website. Stay tuned for our daily forecast discussion videos, which should become more frequent over the next few weeks. If you have any questions or comments, we're really excited to talk to you about the pattern. Our long-range discussions are always really interesting, because it's very humbling as a meteorologist or weather enthusiast to talk about this stuff and then see the forecast change completely over the next few weeks. So we'll be here. We're looking forward to talking to you, and we hope you guys have a great weekend.